It's interesting, Rabbi, that you just said tzedek, tzedek, terdov. So Friday night, I had to speak at a dinner of a Christian evangelical group here in Iowa, and I was asked to give the benediction, which is a tricky situation, you know. So actually I spoke about tzedek, tzedek, terdov. Why does it say twice, righteousness, righteousness, you shall pursue? It's enough to say tzedek, terdov, one time, righteousness, pursue. But tzedek, tzedek, righteousness, righteousness, justice, justice, pursue, because there's a goal of righteousness. You can say, to get there, I can use any means at my disposal. The goal has to be righteous, and the process of reaching the goal has to be righteous. So that's righteous, righteous. Righteous for the means, and righteous for the end, to pursue. So, you know, I'm thinking about this Shabbat, about both the means and the end. When my friend Simon Falek said he's going to organize a minyan, so I assumed that he's going to turn to Rabbi Jacobson, and that he'd organize people in the community for the minyan. I had no idea that he would actually fly 9 students from the yeshiva to Des Moines and put them up in a hotel, and then turn to the Jacobsons to organize enough food to feed a division. Not a battalion, 3 battalions in the division. There was really enough food on Shabbat. I can't thank you enough. Thank you for the whole organization. So I have a tremendous sense of gratitude that both the means and the end, I mean the thoughtfulness and the input, the consideration, the love, Ahavat Yisrael, is very heartwarming. What I didn't tell the Bachorim, the boys, is that the past few years, my son became very drawn to Chabad Nigunim. And he took his kids very often to Tzama, to concerts with a lot of Nigunim of Chabad, because he loved them very much. I just will tell you so thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, to all of you. I'll just tell you a short story about tefillin. I told the boys on Shabbat, and I'll repeat the story in English for you, because it tells a little bit about the battle in which Moshe was killed. It tells a little bit about him, and it tells a lot about Ahavat Yisrael. Moshe, one of the things that he used to say, Moshe was my oldest son of 8 children. He left 6 children. He was 39, he was killed, and he was the commander of the forces that first entered Gaza on the 27th of October. He had spent 15 years in special ops in the Air Force. He was very accomplished, he was very, very smart. And he had been on many operations outside of Israel that are still classified. I don't know exactly what he did, but his friends in the unit told me that he visited many countries without a passport. And there are many bad people who met their Creator through his efforts. So he was chosen. There's a division called 551. And that's the division of commandos and reserves. Those who went through various special op units, commando units, when they go into reserves, they go into 551. So you may know some of the names like Egoz, like Maglan, Sayeret Tzanchanim, different units. Moshe was in Shaldag. Shaldag is the equivalent of the Delta Force. They actually train with your Delta Force here at Fort Bragg in North Carolina. And when the division entered, it's a very big division. It has 8 battalions, Usually a division has 3 or 4. This is a very big division, has 8 battalions. Each battalion has 3 companies, and when it enters battle, it goes in as a pyramid. It goes like in a triangle, right? So the point company is at the head of the pyramid. He was the commander of the point company that entered Gaza. So basically, all of the battles in the first 2 weeks, he conducted. And he conducted very successfully. And even though he was at the battalion commander level, he was already a major, and a major would normally command a battalion. When the war began and they made the plans to enter Gaza, the division commander asked him to take a battalion. He told the division commander, it was not a good idea, because for 5 years I haven't ordered a company. And we connect with our eyes, we don't even need to speak. We understand each other. So as the commander of the company, I prefer to go in as the point company of the division. So on the 5th day of the war, he was killed on the 15th day of the war. It was Friday afternoon, just before Shabbat. It was the Shabbat of Parshat Chayei Sarah. Avraham Avinu was looking for a cave to bury Sarah, and he was looking for a tunnel. He was also looking for a cave in which he was ultimately buried. But it was a tunnel from which the Hamas were exiting constantly and firing missiles into southern Israel, and then running back into the tunnel, so they couldn't be found. So his assignment that Friday afternoon was to find the shaft leading to the tunnel. It was supposed to be, according to intelligence, it was supposed to be in a mosque. They scoured the mosque. They began at 2 o'clock. And for about an hour, they scoured the mosque. They didn't find the shaft. When they came out of the mosque, he sensed that there was a trap, and he assumed that the trap was going to be terrorists inside the buildings next to the mosque. And he sent the sniffing dog into the alleyway. The dog sat down 3 times in the wrong place. He saw that there was nothing there. It was a tree. Apparently, it was part of the trap. When they entered in the formation of house-to-house fighting, they went into the second house, and there, in the inner room, with his command team, they found the shaft. He announced on the wireless, "I found the shaft, Shabbat Shalom." It was 3:21 in the afternoon. As soon as he said Shabbat Shalom, they set off the explosion. Apparently there was a camera that followed them in, from in the tunnel, they followed them through the camera. And there was a massive explosion which basically blew them out on the lower torso. And then the walls fell down on top of them, so there was no chance for survival. And the 6 soldiers on the other side of the wall lost their legs. 2 of the 6 lost both legs, 4 lost 1 leg. And but thank God they survived. So that's how he ended his life, saying Shabbat Shalom. So Friday afternoon has taken on a much greater significance in my life. At the time when he died, so we were all on the phone, the family, talking to each other, saying Shabbat Shalom. And I was actually on the phone with his oldest daughter, with my oldest granddaughter, Komi, and we were joking. And little did we know that her father, my son, was already not among the living. Only found out hours later. Another thing that happened right after he died, all my boys were in the line of fire. When the knock came on the door, I just didn't know who was going to fall on, because 5 of my boys, I have 6, 1 is special needs, he's Down syndrome, so he wasn't in the line of fire, although he also served packing duffel bags for the soldiers. He also served, but the 5 were in the line of fire, except for my youngest one, who had major surgery on his knee, so he couldn't get a combat profile, but he was fighting to get the combat profile. So he went through surgery, which normally takes 9 months, where you can up the profile to combat, and he was waiting to get a response. But it was only 6 or 7 months after the surgery. A half hour after Moshe was killed, he got the phone call from the surgeon saying that I'm going to raise your profile so you can be combat as well. And he didn't know that at that time his oldest brother was already not among the living. So he is now in combat, and he went through, I had to of course give permission because the head of personnel didn't want to give any more combat roles to the boys, but they all went back into combat, every one of them. And he went into artillery. This morning, on the way here, he sent me a WhatsApp that he was just accepted to officers' school. He did his half a year in artillery. He's on the Lebanese border now, firing artillery into Lebanon, and now he's just accepted into officers' training. But the story I want to tell you is about tefillin. Know how connected Chabad is to the great merit of encouraging people to put on tefillin, enabling them to put on tefillin, seeking them out so they can take part of the mitzvah. So I'll tell you a story about tefillin that you can use and think about. One of the things Moshe used to say, he had a lot of sayings. We actually put out a magnet with his picture, and some of the things he used to say to his chayalim. You can actually pass it around if you'd like. And one of the things he used to say is ruach lechima im harbe ahava, a spirit of fighting with a lot of love.
Put it on the group.
He was somebody who understood contrasts and how things that seemingly contradict, which is one of the basic ideas in Hasidus actually, that things that appear to be contradictory can actually be in harmony, actually complement each other. So he used to talk about ruach lechima im harbe ahava, a spirit of fighting with lots of love. And he was someone who projected a great deal of love to his soldiers. So one example has to do with tefillin. On the 5th day of the war, he was in the thick of battle, and the company next to his came under a grenade attack. What happened was they were after a period of fighting, house-to-house fighting, and they had apparently neutralized the area, so they had time to rest. And how do you rest in a war zone? They bring in the D9s, these big bulldozers, thank you. The D9 is a big bulldozer. They're protected from explosions and from bullets, and they build a kind of dirt battery around the forces so that marksmen can target them. Okay, so they're kind of protected from this dirt barrier around them. But what Hamas did was they sent a
drone.
A drone, thank you. They sent a drone with a grenade and a camera. And I actually saw the film afterwards because they filmed it, the attack. They dropped a grenade in this area within the dirt barriers. And you can actually see the grenade falling down. And shortly before it went into the middle of the group, miraculously, a wind kind of blew it to the side, so it fell on the other side of the dirt battery. Well, there were still 13 injured, a few of them seriously. So I got a call from the command post outside of the war zone, and the officer said, the commander, which is my son, asks his father, like he was speaking in the third person, to visit the injured soldiers. Now, at that point, I didn't know the whole story. And injured soldiers, I heard injured soldiers, I thought it was his company, his soldiers, but it was the company next to him. And I said, okay, and he said, well, you have to go to Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem, Barzilai Hospital in Ashkelon, and Tel HaShomer Hospital in Tel Aviv. So I made the rounds, and I heard the story with each stop, with each one of the visits to the injured soldiers. But towards evening, I got to Tel HaShomer Hospital, and that's where the most serious injured soldier was. His name was Netanel. And I walked into the room, and I saw someone who was, bandaged head to toe. He had shrapnel in his arms, his legs, and actually some shrapnel entered his insides. He had in his liver and kidney. So he was the most seriously wounded, but he was in stable condition. But I could see that he had a big yarmulke on his head, but he had tattoos, all over the place. So this is obviously someone who came from, a different world, and at some point did tshuva, and became very serious about his Judaism. So he told me, he looked up at me, he said, "You're Leiter's father?" He didn't call him by his first name, I always call him by Leiter. So I said, "I'm Leiter too, but yeah, I'm his father." He looked at me and he started crying. He said, "Your son saved my life." And then he said, "He saved all of our lives." So it was only later that I figured out I heard what the story was during the Shiva from other soldiers. He didn't know all the details. I heard it from the side of those who were with Moshe, with my son. But then he said to me, "Do you understand what happened just now? I'm lying here, and about 3 hours ago, a guy came in and said, what kind of tefillin did you used to have?" I said, "Used to have?" I didn't understand. I told him what kind of tefillin I had, Sfard, Ashkenaz. And then he said, "What kind of specialties did you have in the tefillin? What kind of special ornaments did you have with the tefillin?" So I told him. 3 hours later, he came back. "Look at the tefillin, he just brought me brand new tefillin, brand new bag, everything. It's beautiful. I don't understand. Maybe you know what happened." I said, "I have no idea." So later on, I heard the story from the other side. What happened was, when they came under fire, when the grenade exploded, that company commander, lost control, because when they were injured, the Hamas started firing from different directions, and he couldn't figure out where it was coming from. So he couldn't get the injured out, which means they could bleed to death. That's the biggest fear. When there's injured soldiers, the biggest fear is you have to get them out of a battle zone, they could bleed to death. So for Moshe's command team, they were about 1 kilometer away, about 800 meters away, almost 1 kilometer away. They heard on the wireless the chaos. The commander is saying, "I can't figure out where they're firing from. I can't get the wounded out. I can't get the wounded out." He was hysterical. "I can't get the wounded out." And Moshe always used to say in training, he always told his soldiers, "I don't want heroes. Don't do any heroic acts. Only when there's injured soldiers. When there's injured soldiers, everybody becomes a hero." So despite the fact that it wasn't his command, he was next to him, they took off. He said, "After me. Acharai, after me." Elisha Medan told me this story. He lost both legs later when Moshe was killed. He's sitting on the hospital bed telling me the story without legs. Literally, and he didn't cover them. He wanted everybody to see. He has no legs. Elisha Medan. He said, "Yechiel, Haben Shelcha, your son, took off like a stallion." I said, "I never thought I could run so fast in my life." He said, "Run." We ran. It was nighttime. We couldn't put up a flare. And it wasn't flat land. It was full of rocks and rubble from the explosions. And we're running like lunatics. He said, we have to get there. We have to save him. He said, as soon as Moshe arrived on the scene, he understood where the fire was coming from. That's how professional he was. He sensed where the fire was coming from. He immediately ordered 2 tanks to block the fire, to protect the wounded soldiers, and then he instructed how to remove the soldiers from the battlefield. That's how he saved their lives. That's what he meant there, Netana, when he said he saved my life. He saved his life because it wasn't just putting a tourniquet on. He had to get them out of the line of fire. And the 2 tanks protected them, and then he was able to instruct the other armored vehicles how to take the injured soldiers out. What happened was, when he put the 2 tanks opposite the fire that they were absorbing, the tanks squished the personal gear of the soldiers. And Moshe noticed that one of the personal gears that had become squished was Nathanael's personal bag, and inside was tefillin. And Moshe understood how important, because of the trip Nathanael took in his life, how important the tefillin would be to him. So from the field, from the battlefield, from Gaza, he took the encrypted phone, he called the command center near Rehovot, and he said, here's a number, call this guy, who Moshe had worked with in one of his civilian jobs, call him, send him to Tel HaShomer, tell him that I said he should find out what kind of tefillin the Tal had, he should immediately go to Bnei Brak and get him new tefillin and bring him today, so that tomorrow morning he already has tefillin that he's able to put on. So obviously the story tells the importance of tefillin, but also tells the importance of being considerate, thinking about other people. It tells the story of being able to have a fighting spirit and to have the presence of mind at the same time, to show a lot of love for another person.
And Irving, we didn't know the story, but I told Irving, in honor of your son, to make a bracha on tefillin, and he did it. Something, your son got into him.
Very nice.
So Baruch, you see that?
So thank you again for the wonderful hospitality, Rabbi Rebbitzin. Thank you all for coming. Thank the Bachrim for coming from New York. And we should understand that we're in a very, very historic time, where the state of Israel is the point commander of Western civilization. Like my son was the point commander of his company, Israel is the point commander of Western civilization. And the more that America and the West understands that if we succeed in destroying Hamas, Western civilization has a chance. If we don't succeed, they're coming for you. They're coming for America. Make no mistake about it.
We saw yesterday. We saw already yesterday.
They're coming for you.
Yeah.
So do everything you can to make sure that your representatives are supporting of Israel. This business of holding up arms. Can you imagine such a thing to an ally? To hold up arms? Just so that you understand, the bunker bombers, the 2,000-pound bombs, can reach 30, 40 feet below ground. The tunnels that Hamas have built, in some cases, are 150 feet below ground. We're talking about a tunnel network that's 400 miles long. You know how wide the state of Iowa is? Anybody know? 310.
Yes.
It's 310 miles. Imagine the tunnel network in Gaza. Gaza is about the same size as Greater Des Moines. It's 400 miles. That's what these people built with your funding, with European funding. Everybody's pouring in humanitarian funding. You took humanitarian funding and built tunnels in order to fire missiles and to build a whole complex of war against innocent civilians. So do everything you can. Of course, there's davening, but in addition, anything you can on a political level, on an ideational level, to have Americans understand. That's why I'm here. That's what I came, is to speak to this large, very, very large, influential Christian group, so that they can influence the American representatives, the American decision makers, certainly at this time of an election year, to do the right thing and not to appease. You can't appease evil. You can't appease the enemy. You have to deter. People say today, you have these Tucker Carlson types who say, well, we don't need to be involved, and war costs a lot of money, deterrence costs money. Yes, deterrence costs money, but war costs a lot more money. If you deter, you prevent war. If you don't deter, you ultimately end up in a world war. That's what happened in the Second World War. In order to prevent that from happening, we have to be strong now. So thank you again. We should have a good week and much success.
Amen.